Good evening, and welcome to tonight's presentation from the Quarries, an archive of Masonic lore. From antiquity to the Enlightenment, philosophers and craftsmen have maintained, in varying idioms, a single conviction. The world discloses itself in number, measure, and form. Plato's Timaeus states the point with unusual boldness. The demiurge fashions the cosmos according to mathematical structures, assigning the elements the regular bodies and fitting together nature from triangles and ratios. The dodecahedron, we are told, is employed for the whole, as the figure nearest to the encompassing universe. Contemporary classicists and historians of science, from Proclus' late antique commentary through Cornford to recent scholarship, continue to read these passages as an attempt to ground physics in intelligible geometry. In later Christian imagery, the same thought becomes icon. The famous Bible Moralize frontispiece depicts the Creator bent over the circle of the world, compasses in hand, the Architectus Mundi measuring and ordering creation. Scripture itself furnished the formula beloved by early moderns and by Freemasons alike. Thou hast ordered all things by measure and number and weight. Freemasonry, emerging publicly in the early 18th century while conserving older craft mythologies and pedagogies, turned this perennial claim into a program of moral and intellectual formation. Geometry is not merely useful. It is, according to William Preston, the very foundation of the art and of the fellow crafts curriculum, especially geometry. What follows is not a primer, but a set of connected studies for an audience already conversant with Western esotericism and craft tradition. 1. Ancient geometries and their cosmologies. 2. The Masonic recuperation of geometry as symbol and discipline. 3. The Lodge as cosmogram and didactic machine. And 4. A theological coda on the great architect and the moral uses of mathematical contemplation. The Rhind Mathematical Papyrus evidences a highly developed practical geometry in the 2nd millennium BCE, and the colossal precision of the Giza alignments, cardinally oriented within a few arcminutes, exhibits the marriage of measurement and cosmology in stone. Sir Flinders Petrie's classic survey remains the baseline for discussions of that accuracy. It is often asserted that Egyptian harpedonaptai, rope stretchers, set right angles with a 12-knot cord in the proportions 3 to 4 to 5. Modern historians note the evidence is mixed, yet the tradition remains widespread in histories of mathematics. Pythagoreans and the moralization of number. With Pythagoras and his successors, number becomes not only heuristic, but salvific. All is number. The tetractys functions as a sign of cosmic order. The right triangle becomes a token of necessary truth, and the pentagram is associated, already in, antiquity's reports of Pythagorean law with health, hygeia. Euclid later canonizes the geometry the Pythagoreans revered. Book 1, Proposition 1, constructs the equilateral triangle from intersecting circles, and Book 1, Proposition 47, states the Pythagorean theorem in the form celebrated in Masonic tradition. Plato's cosmology and the regular bodies. In Timaeus 53c to 57d, the corpuscles of fire, air, water, and earth are modelled by the tetrahedron, octahedron, icosahedron, and cube respectively, while the dodecahedron is reserved for the all-embracing cosmos. Scholarly discussions, from Proclus to Cornford and beyond, emphasize that these are not mere pictures, but an attempt to bind physics to intelligible form. Islamic science and the two geometries. The Ikhwān al Ṣafāqq, Brethren of Purity, writing in 10th century Basra and Baghdad, open their encyclopedic Rasail with treatises on arithmetic and geometry in which the mathematical sciences are at once technical and spiritual. The modern critical edition and translation, Oxford Institute of Ismaili Studies, makes this strand readily accessible. The tradition's visual corollary is the luxuriant geometric art of the Islamic world, giri, muqarnas, and star polygons, an aniconism that proclaims unity through proportion, a medieval and Renaissance coda. The Gothic cathedral is the West's monumental meditation on ratio, and the Creator with compasses image in the Bible's Moralises shows how thoroughly geometry became a theological idiom. Humanists revived the theme. Luca Pacioli's De Divina Proportione, 1509, popularized the divine proportion. Kepler's Harmonices Mundi sought cosmic consonance in number. The Platonic dodecahedron as cosmos remained a durable topos. Freemasonry's classic textual spine binds geometry to moral formation. The medieval old charges identify Masonry with geometry. Anderson rearticulates that claim for the Enlightenment, and Preston turns it into pedagogy. In the 1723 Constitution's tradition, the origin narrative places the seven liberal arts, especially geometry, at the heart of human wisdom, inscribed, as one modern précis of Anderson puts it, upon the heart of Adam, so that the crafts curriculum is not an antiquarian adornment, but an anthropology of understanding. William Preston's Illustrations of Masonry then makes this explicit for the fellow craft. Among the seven arts, especially geometry, is singled out as the science that demonstrates the power, the wisdom, and the goodness of the Almighty. These are not empty superlatives. They authorize the lodge's consistent habit of reading mathematical form as moral analogue. The square and compasses, with or without the letter G, compress this rationale into a single hieroglyph. In the language of the monitors, the square teaches rectitude, and the compasses to circumscribe our desires and keep our passions within due bounds. When the letter G appears, it functions as a hinge between the practical and the theological, read variously as geometry, as God, or as the great architect of the universe. The multiplicity is deliberate. The emblem insists that what we learn by straight edge and arc is not merely technique, but participation in intelligible order. G as geometry's canon, G as the ground of being, G as the architect who frameth all things by weight and measure. In Anglo-American usage, these senses are commonly taught together. Modern lodge materials still summarize it crisply as God, G-A-O-T-U, or geometry. The point within a circle, emborded by two perpendicular parallel lines, is one of the most economical moral diagrams in the craft. As Mackey preserves the monitorial gloss, the point represents an individual brother, the circle, the boundary line of his duty to God and man, the parallels commonly identified with the two St. Johns. That reading is ethical, stay centered, keep within bounds. But note the deeper cosmographic memory. The point in circle is also the ancient sign of the solar orb, an emblem of fixed orientation amid cyclical change. Thus, the catechesis naturalizes an esoteric truth. Alignment to a stable center is the condition of rightly ordered motion. The symbol is of great importance, Mackey adds, precisely because it commands peculiar attention at the intersection of moral and cosmic geometry. The 47th proposition of Euclid, Book 1, Proposition 47, is where Freemasonry most explicitly parades demonstration as symbol. Heath's translation is familiar. In right-angled triangles, the square on the side subtending the right angle is equal to the squares on the sides containing the right angle. Early Masonic print culture is already drawn to it, appearing by the 1730s. By 1815, the United Grand Lodge of England prescribes the past master's jewel, the square, and the diagram of the 47th proposition, thereby tying governance to geometrical mastery. Allegorically, the unification of the two squares upon the hypotenuse figures the art of bringing parts to concord. Practically, it enshrines the craft's esteem for proof as such. To wear the jewel, in the older English usage, is to be marked as one who can prove his work and square his government by reason. Finally, the blazing star and the pentagram occupy a liminal space between monitorial catechesis and wider esoteric reception. In web-line lectures, the star is a hieroglyphic light, frequently glossed as divine providence or the sun. In some continental and higher degree contexts, the five-pointed star takes on Pythagorean valences, health, proportion, hygieia, even hermetic correspondences. Anglo-American craft monitors typically keep the emblem within a theistic moral horizon, a guiding, vigilant light at the heart of the lodge. The coexistence of these layers is instructive. It shows how the craft stabilizes symbol under a common ethical reading while allowing learned brothers to trace deeper historical filaments when appropriate to the audience. The form of a regular lodge, a parallelogram or oblong square, its greatest length from east to west, its breadth from north to south, is not arbitrary. As Mackey insists, other plane figures would be eminently incorrect, because the figure itself is teaching. The lodge is a diagram of the world's course of light, a didactic map whose long axis conforms to the sun's rising and setting. Some 19th century expositor antiquarians pushed further. If you circumscribe the oikumene as conceived in the Solomonic age, from the Pillars of Hercules across the Mediterranean to Asia Minor, you obtain an east-west oblong. The lodge thereby stands for the inhabited world, Templum Mundi in miniature. This is cosmology as floor plan, when height and depth are added, from the surface to the centre, and, as high as the heavens, the lodge is taught as a double cube. Oliver famously moralizes the figure. The cubic stone is perfected stability. The double cube, with heaven superposed upon earth, becomes the working space where human action participates in celestial order. English tracing board lectures absorb this language. Many jurisdictions still describe the first tracing board as a double cube chamber whose proportions instruct the eye before a word is uttered. The initiate does not merely hear doctrine, he stands inside a ratio. The ornaments complete the cosmogram. Webb's lectures, and the Morgan-Chock-Webb family of monitors, enumerate the mosaic pavement, the indented or tessellated border, and the blazing star. The pavement figures the contraries of life. The border, often rendered as a cord tied in lovers' knots with tassels, images the chain of union binding differences in charity. The star, placed at the centre, is either the theistic emblem of providence or the solar light by which the whole is read. Over all is stretched the starry-decked heaven, the lodge's covering. Moral work is conducted under a canopy of law and beauty. The power of this triad lies in its integration. Pavement and border teach contingency and fraternity, while the central light judges and guides them both. The paired pillars, Boaz and Jachin, with their measured chapiters of lily work, pomegranates, and network, 1 Kings 7, translate biblical architectural geometry into ritual topography. Read plainly, they encode polarities, strength, establishment. Read astronomically, they can stand as solstitial gates. Read operatively, they fix the east-west flow of light and authority through the lodge. Whatever the register, the lesson coheres. True stability is not stasis, but balanced tension, established by rightly ordered strength. And to bind this section again to the curriculum, the fellow craft is sent to the 7 liberal arts and sciences, especially geometry, with older monitors even preserving the statement that geometry and masonry were originally synonymous terms. That is not antiquarian bravado. It means the lodge room is itself a theorem in which the mason is both diagram and demonstrator. The craft's non-sectarian title, Great Architect of the Universe, crystallizes in 18th century English masonry, cohering with the architectonic idiom of natural theology and with Anderson's recasting of the old charges. It is not a lowest common denominator euphemism. It is a claim about reality's knowable order and about the moral fruit of contemplating it. When lectures pair geometry and God in a single initial over the square and compasses, they are not confusing domains, but binding them. G as the science that reveals proportion, G as the personal source of intelligible form, and G as the architect whose weight, number, and measure ground the mason's obligation to square his acts. Thus, the title, Great Architect of the Universe, operates as a methodological humility and a metaphysical courage. One God, read by many lights, one cosmos, explored by the liberal arts, one moral architecture, enacted in the work of the lodge. (1) Geometry is contemplative and operative. From the Ikhwān's opening epistles to Preston's fellow craft lecture, the same distinction recurs. Geometry trains the hand and converts the eye of the soul. The lodge's curriculum never permits technique to be severed from truth. 2. Symbols are demonstrative. The 47th proposition is not merely emblematic. It is a proof. Hence the craft's delight in making it a master's jewel. In parading a diagram, masonry parades a demonstration. Moral life, like right-angled triangles, has necessary structures. 3. The temple is a model of the world and of the self. The oblong and the double cube, the starry canopy and the checkered floor, the pillars and the point within a circle. These are teaching machines, the macrocosm in miniature, and therefore a mirror in which the initiate learns to square his acts and circumscribe his desires. God geometrizes, said the ancients. The craft adds, and the mason studies that geometry to become a builder of himself. In an age saturated with technique, the old instruments still instruct: a point, a circle, a square, a triangle, no museum pieces, but a living grammar of wisdom. For a deep dive into the history, philosophy, and traditions of Freemasonry, subscribe to From the Quarries. You will find hundreds of lectures, presentations, shorts, and other Masonic works written by Freemasons for Freemasons. Visit FromTheQuarries.com or YouTube @FromTheQuarries.